Okay, let's see. I don't see it on LinkedIn yet. So if you're out there watching us, bear with us 1 minute. Technical challenges.
That's what happens when old people try to run technology, right?
That's right. There we go. Looks like it's popped up on LinkedIn. So I think we are live. Awesome. Well, with that, then I'm going to go ahead and get us started.
All right.
So, for those of you who are watching, sorry for starting a couple minutes late. Like I said, we had some technical challenges with our programming today, but I'm really excited about this one today. We've got a special guest. I know my live presentations over the past 6 months have just been all me. So now I get to share the spotlight with a good friend of mine, Maria Rogers. Maria, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
We're here to talk about funding and or financing. Same difference, right? Your franchise startup. And so for those of you out there joining us, thank you very much. And this will be recorded. If for any reason you have to leave early, let me know and we can send you out a recording of it. But uh, I'm going to talk to Maria a little bit about her background because I think she has a special perspective in terms of helping people get financing done. And we're going to talk about all kinds of different ways to fund and finance your business. But I think that as many of you know who have followed me, I walk the walk and talk the talk too. I own franchise businesses. I've used a couple of these sources to fund my franchises, but I am by no means an expert. So with that, I'll say welcome again. I'm That Franchise Guy. You can find me at ThatFranchiseGuy.com or all of these places at the bottom of the screen to track me down. Certainly you found me here on LinkedIn. So I'm not going to spend any more time on me. Maria, tell us a little bit about your background, what you find so compelling about funding, and then we'll get into the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll try to make it short because it's a long story. But started in the business ownership world in 2004. Started my own business. It was actually modeled after a franchise. I won't say the name, but because I was one of those that didn't want to pay the fees and, the royalties and all that. So, but I basically, to make it very short, I had to close that business after 5 years, and then started other businesses, license opportunities, ended up buying a franchise, was able to scale that business to 4 locations, and it was a very well-known brand, so I sold all 4 of those locations. And then from there, I've actually started some other businesses, bought another franchise, and so total of I think about nine businesses now. Thank God for hair color.
Well, and you do what I do as well, right?
I do. I'm a franchise consultant. I've been a consultant for I guess going on 6 years. Time has flown, and now the funding side, Stone Funding Solutions, started that pretty recently, just from being in the world of helping, clients, trying to get them to the right place, to get funding. So.
Well, there's so many different ways to, and I'm going to say this and I'll tell a funny story. So many different ways to skin a cat, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were actually at a franchise meeting. I don't remember if you were there or not. And I don't even remember the woman I was sitting next to. And I said that comment about skinning a cat, and she was a cat lover and just got all up in arms about it.
Yeah.
She was incensed that I would use such
Yeah.
language, and I thought I was just being funny. But so anyway, if there's any cat lovers watching, I apologize. I did not mean it to be offensive, but there really is. And I think if you go, and we're going to certainly talk about SBA loans because that's the 1,000-pound gorilla. But if you're tunnel visioned on that's the only way to finance it, I think you'll learn a little bit today. So before we get into that, though, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, just the general state of the economy. Obviously, we've had some some changes in leadership in the last 6 months,
Hmm.
or last, I guess now just 6 weeks, um, and what the state of funding, where is
Yeah.
the FBA, where are things like that? What do you think about where we are in the business cycle right now?
Yeah, well, and the key word there is what do I think, right? I mean, because I think that's, nobody really knows. I'm certainly not a, financial planner or,
Yeah,
a tax consultant or anything like that, right? I mean, but I watch the news and listen to a lot of podcasts and educate myself as just like you guys do, right? So, I we can look at, in 2024, I mean, what SBA approved 70,000 loans and, $21.1 billion in funding,
yeah,
13% increase. Now, that was 24. I know this is a new administration, as you said, but, the current administration is very pro business, small
right.
business, clearly. And there's all the things with the tariffs and the different things that are being talked about. Is that going to affect? We don't know. We don't know. It may help. We just
Right.
don't really know. And so, but when it comes to the trajectory at this moment, it's very strong.
Yeah.
So we can only go off of what's happening right now and the growth pattern. As far as I see, banks are still loaning and they're still, Now, with that being said, keep in mind, sometimes that also means that they're going to be a little bit more strict. They're going to require some things that maybe they didn't, look at so much before. I mean, so yes, that can definitely play a role.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your the disclaimer, and obviously nobody has a crystal ball, and neither
Right.
one of us are CPAs or attorneys or anything like that. So
Mhm.
um, we are just experienced franchise people and business owners,
Right.
given our 2 cents on where we think things are headed, right?
Exactly.
So so let's just take that and go. Since we talked a little bit about SBA, let's start there. Um, in fact, I need to move my, there we go. Let's get into that. So, um, I think when you're talking about franchise startups, there's two particular programs people typically use, right? One I hear often referred to as a express
Hmm.
loan, something like that, and
Hmm.
and then the 7A, which is probably the more traditional
It
for
is.
bigger
Hmm.
ones.
Right.
Talk a little bit about the state of those loans. What does it take to get into them? Things like that.
Yeah, I haven't really seen much, change in terms of how you get into them. But the difference is obviously the amount.
Hmm.
Your express is going to be 50,000 to 500,000, and then your standard 7A is up to 5 million. And with that being said, there's going to be different requirements. Obviously, your express loans are express, right?
Right.
They're gonna fund a lot faster. In some cases, you don't even need to have any collateral, especially if it's a $50,000 loan, that type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Once you start getting into much larger ticket, you have to fully collateralize. So meaning, all of your assets, your properties.
Right.
And then as far as your rates and terms, I mean, all those are going to be different. But your express loan, obviously, I don't want to say easy, that's probably not the right word when you're using SBA, but certainly um, not as much required in terms of paperwork and that type of thing. And I will say with express, some people may do like real estate and build outs. I find that most banks that I've been working with, and I work with over 47 different lenders,
Mm.
and I find that, a lot of them don't necessarily want to do the real estate on the smaller loans, like the build outs.
Right.
So those are great for your service industry loans, working capital loans, things like that. So,
I think this maybe is a good point to take just a half a step back and talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important for people to think about when they're going through this process. Yeah, they have to find a business or a franchise they're excited about, but structuring how they're going to capitalize it, how they're going to pay the bills,
hmm
how they're going to get profitable is very important.
hmm
And I counsel people. I know a little bit about it, but that's really not my expertise. So I
right.
lean on, my funding partners to help with that. And I think that you bring a very unique perspective to it. And in mentioning 47 different banks that you work with or lenders, talk about how you operate almost more as a strategist than actually the
hmm
bank, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not the bank. So I'm, a lot like when we're looking at the right kind of franchise for a candidate. I'm doing the same thing when it comes to the funding strategy. And there's more than one way to find that funding and to get that funding, right? There's more than one source. But with that also being said, there is a pattern that you should be applying to this, meaning, 401k rollover, SBA, your own liquid. I mean, there's certainly, uh, things that need to be talked about, and we do need to create a funding strategy. It's very
Right.
important that people don't realize when they're starting a business, and they can really, really, go through months and months of discovery looking at a franchise, only to get to the end of that. Okay, now I'm ready to fund this business, and they've done some things that were, you know not helpful in the process, and have caused them to not be able to get funded. It's
Sure.
happened. We've seen it. We've seen it, with our candidates. So it's important. This is a very important topic in the beginning stages
Yeah.
of your discovery process, not just the end. You know.
No, I think that's really important, and to even touch on that, when should they talk to you? Because there are people that I will refer even before we find a franchise, just
hmm
because their financial situation is that precarious. So let's
Right.
figure out where, what exactly you might be able to qualify for.
Right. Right.
I'd say the majority, I have enough experience to say, all right, I'm confident you're going to be able to get to this level. So we find a franchise that say it's 200 grand to get started, 250, something like
hmm
that. And so then we'll come to you. Um, but if they're at all unsure about how they're going to do it, they should be talking to you really at the same time we start conversations directly with the franchise, right?
Well, and even before. I mean, I really, I always give the analogy of buying a home. You typically, when you're buying a home, you don't go find the home and then go to the bank. A lot of times, some people might, because
Yeah.
they know they have that money, so they're pretty secure, right? They know they're okay. I can get that. And same thing with franchising. But then there's others that are like, I don't know how much of a home I can get. I don't know what I can afford. And so it's better to have that conversation before you even start looking at franchises. Now, keep in mind, you're not funding the business until you find the franchise. You've decided that's the route you want to go. And that takes, well, we know what average of 3 or 4 months,
Yep.
right? So, a quick conversation just to talk about the strategy and to understand what it is that you have to do or have to have, maybe even just creating a plan of action. You're not funding, your credit's not being pulled, it's as far as hard pulls,
Right.
um, and so it's not affecting anything, but it really takes a lot of the guessing game out of it, and the pressure of, how am I going to do this?
Uh,
It's a very important part of the process. So I would say most people, not all, should have a conversation before you even start looking at franchises.
yeah, and even the person who says, "Well, I've got 400 grand liquid," Um, but I want to spend as little of that as possible.
Hmm. Yeah.
We still need to have the conversation then,
Yeah.
right? Let's figure
Yeah.
out what are your resources, what are your options, and create a strategy for that.
Yeah, because look, just because you have 400 grand liquid and you want to get a loan, your financials may not be as healthy as your bank account,
Yeah,
and it happens, right? I mean, I had a client who had plenty of liquid, but come to find out he owed taxes and
yeah.
he didn't disclose that. And so, unfortunately, I mean, he even signed the agreement, was going down the path, and was not at midnight hour, was not able to get funding.
Wow.
So, it's like that. Those are things that, we have to be transparent. And just because you have the liquid, great,
Yeah.
you could still get the business, but now you could be in a position where you're gonna have to use your liquid. You can't get a
Well,
loan.
you
So,
bring up another good point, and that is, you know, as you go through this process, it's really important, especially with your funding partner, to be completely transparent about
completely transparent.
everything that's
Hmm.
going on,
Yeah.
because there's likely a way to help them, but not if we don't know what we're working with. And
Hmm.
it's like
Hmm.
going to trial and getting blindsided, right?
Hmm.
You can't do that. So,
Yeah, exactly.
um, and this is kind of funny. I'm sitting here thinking, before we started the live part, you and I were talking about, yeah, we're going to go off on some tangents, and here we went.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I
Well,
think that was
that's where you get the gold nuggets. Come on. I mean, that's when the wisdom comes out. So, I mean,
well,
lots of this information like SBA and all that, you can go to the Small Business Administration website and find lots of information about
mhm,
SBA, right? And so, the rates and things like that. It's some of these gold nuggets that you're not going to find that
that's right.
on the SBA website. So,
That's right.
yeah.
Well, the big takeaway, hopefully everybody is getting that. Yeah, there's some really awesome, knowledgeable, friendly faces out there that can help you with strategy, and
Hmm.
and it doesn't necessarily have to be a strategy about, hey, we've got to do this now. I mean, you and I
Right.
both operate that same way. In fact, we were talking about that as well a minute ago. That it's about building relationships and helping people, and whether it takes 2 weeks or 2 years,
Yeah.
let's help people if they're motivated. So
Yeah. I mean, look, I started well, the first business I started was actually, with my mother. And so she did finance, a good portion of that. And then the second business was through a friend
mhm,
who was a client of mine, actually, client/friend, not in the franchise world, but in the other industry I was in. And they actually loaned me the money for the franchise that I purchased.
yeah,
And at that time I didn't have the money. Actually, I just didn't think I had the money, to be honest with you. I never even went to someone like myself
yeah,
to create that strat. I thought the bank was the only way to go, right? The bank's not going to give me money. I didn't know there was somebody like me, that could say, hey, let's create a path, right? Well, I did end up finding that money. And but it's my point here, and I certainly, I digress, because that's the thing. I mean, it's some people are, just go to the bank and they don't realize they have other options. And that's
yeah,
why I have a personal, um, I guess, more of a personal reason for doing this is because I've been that person who has had that drive, and wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I need the money.
yep,
And so, I love to help people. Let's just build a strategy. It may not happen today, you
yeah.
know. I might have to say, here's some things that we have to do to get there. But, let's still have a conversation and see. You might be further along than you think you are.
Let's talk about a couple of these other options, and then we can come back to that. But um, rollovers for business startup is the acronym. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about ROBs and rollovers. And I mean, high level, I know there's some offshoot variations, but a lot of people don't realize there are tax-free, penalty-free ways to use
Hmm.
their retirement money to fund their business.
Yeah, and we talked about this before. I mean, I don't want to sit there and get off on the educational part, and there's a lot of nuances when it comes to ROBs and wraps and all of that, right? So, um, but it is a good way to fund your business. A lot of people do it. You do hear a lot of people are like, "Oh no, I don't want to touch my 401k. That's sacred, right? I mean, that's retirement." But let's put it this way, that 401k is being used to fund other people's business. You're investing in companies and you're investing that money in other areas, right? So the 401k and the rollover and the wraps program and things like that are designed for business owners, to fund their own business. Bet on yourself. And now, we're not buying a car, we're not buying a house, we're buying something that is going to, yield you a return, let's hope, at the end of the day. And so, therefore, it is a really good option. I'm not a proponent of, and, you know, like using all of your 401k. I think that just depends on how much you have in that. And also, there's going to be some stipulations on if you can even touch it. It's as far as rollovers and wraps. And for example, my husband is a police officer, and so his is structured very differently. He's not able to actually roll it over, but he can borrow against it and pay himself interest. So that's another option people have. And that's as simple as calling your HR and saying, "Hey, I want to borrow against my 401k," and then you pay yourself back with interest. So those are options, right? But the 401k rollover can be tax, you can get benefits with taxes. And, keep in mind there's going to be some different entity structures that have to be done that maybe aren't your LLCs, that, you have to get the C Corp. And so we have professionals. You work with some of the same CPAs and may have some that can help with those kinds of structures as well. So that's what we bring to the table is we can point people in the right direction. I'm not performing those services, but I can certainly, point you in the right direction. Oh, you've gone. I can't hear you, John. There you go.
Technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties again.
Yeah, this one, I wonder if this mic is dying. You can hear me okay right now?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I mean, I don't know if that's exactly what you're looking for, and hopefully your listeners will understand that there are, I'm just not going to take the time to get into all of the nuances of that because it's pretty. I'm not going to say complicated, but there's a lot of information to go over, and but it is a good option, and it can be a good option. So don't be afraid to explore it. Nobody's going to make you spend your money.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the big thing to take away from today is this high level. Hey, the retirement money is there, and
Yeah.
it is an option. It may be an option for you, may not be. And yeah, if more than likely your current employer, you won't be able to use that money. You'd have to
Yeah.
borrow against it.
Right.
But if you've got an IRA or an old 401k laying around, might be a great option
Right.
for you. I've used it personally to fund a business.
Yeah. We have
And-
to. We have
well,
to.
and
Yeah.
there's some fees that go with it,
Of
and there's
course. But
some paperwork that goes with it,
yeah.
and you got to stay compliant with the IRS. So
Mm-hmm.
it's I typically advise people, to me it's 100 grand mark, right? If it's less than that, just borrow against it or even cash it in and pay
Right.
the fees. It's probably not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But if if you're
Yeah.
going to use 100 plus, it may very well be, and so it should be part of your conversation at least.
Yeah. And I mean, look, you're going to pay fees for lending anywhere you go. Well, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter how you're funding, you're still going to be paying fees. So, I mean, just understand that. And so you're right. It can be a really great option. There are, some regulations and rules around it, and that's what we will help with.
Yeah,
In terms of, does this even work for you?
exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I did just want to touch a little bit on, what I call creative here, which is kind of like you mentioned a few minutes ago about family money. It's home equity lines. It may
Hmm.
be stuff that isn't necessarily sitting in a bank or investment account or your retirement money, um, but it's something that you can access to. And so, any other thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, HELOCs are obviously were very popular in the last couple of years with the
Mhm.
equity spike in people's homes, right? Yeah, I think especially the interest rates that we were seeing now. I mean, it's a different time. Those interest rates are different, but yeah, it could be a really good option, especially if you don't have many options.
Right.
Yeah, and as far as family, loaning to you, I know that there are, like, your parents,
Yeah.
grandparents can gift you money tax free. Talk to your accountant about that.
Yeah.
There are, how much, and different strategies. And then when it comes to like personal loans, like I said, I did get a loan from a friend, and you just need to make sure that don't write your agreement on a paper napkin. I mean, just if that's one piece of advice, and it will really save a relationship.
Yeah.
If you've got a father, brother, whoever it is loaning you money, a friend, make sure that it's done legally. And, well, I want to say legally, that's not really it, but meaning it's structured with legal paperwork,
Well,
behind it.
you want
And
to yeah, you want everybody to just have a clear understanding, and a lot of
yeah.
times verbal conversations get, fuzzy over
Oh
years,
yeah,
right?
for
The other
sure.
thing is you want to be able to write it off on your books and, without paperwork that says
Exactly.
this much is interest and whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
there's a flow, and so we have attorneys that can help with creating those structures. If you don't, we work with plenty of franchise attorneys that can then help with those agreements. John or myself,
yeah,
can point you in the right direction. Again, we don't get any. There's no kickbacks here.
no,
It's not like we have some reason to do that, except we want to help our clients, and we want to make sure that we're giving them the tools and resources that they need to
yeah.
structure their business properly.
So the other piece I want to add here, and then we'll talk a little bit about, maybe some alternative
Hmm.
methods and some of the other stuff that you do as well before we wrap up. But I think the other thing that's important about everything we've talked about so far, and especially the strategy conversation with you, is you can use combinations of all of these. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be, what, like, if your parents say they're going to give you 50 grand, or a friend is going to give you 50 grand, and maybe you need a loan, or maybe you're going to use some retirement money in combination with this to get to the amount that you feel comfortable you need to
Hmm.
start your business. I think that's an important piece too.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think I
Mhm.
mentioned it. I'll call it sometimes the trifecta, if you've got liquid capital, I don't ever recommend somebody use all their liquid capital. I don't think it's the smartest way,
Right.
to fund your business. It happens, but and then you've got, your 401k. If you're able to, take some out of that, maybe you don't want to, take a lot, but take a little bit out of 401k, use some of your liquid, and then, get a smaller SBA loan that feel like the payments are within your comfort level,
Right.
and that's the thing. I mean, so, if a family member is going to give you money, there are so many things, like, your HELOC. I
Right.
actually used, for one of the businesses I started, is I used a 401k and a HELOC and liquid.
Yeah.
And so, it's, and, there's just a lot of ways. But a lot of people don't think about that. So that's
Well,
where, let's create that strategy. And look, even if I can't help you with funding, I would be happy to say, hey, I think here's some great options for you,
yeah.
you know?
Well, I think that's again, that the whole reason for doing it before you invest a whole lot of time in researching a franchise that you get excited about, only to find out you there is no funding today. Let's
Mhm.
create a strategy for 3 to 6 months or however
Mhm.
long that person might need. But they need to talk to somebody knowledgeable to do that. So
Right. Right.
let's wrap up with some alternative. So there's stuff out there that if they can't get an SBA loan, um, but there are other people out there funding and backing startups. What kind of options do those people have?
Yeah, there's unsecured
Yeah,
funding, and that's exactly what it says. I mean, you don't there's no collateral. It's all based off of your credit history, a W-2 or 2 years of tax returns. Showing proof of income.
yeah,
All of these things are going to be factors in how much you can get. The interest rates can be pretty favorable. I mean, it's sometimes even better than SBA from what I've seen. I mean, you've got like you could do 3 year, 5 year, 7 year terms. I mean, from 8 to 14%.
yeah.
And so it's really not. It's not a it's not a bad option to look at, especially
Well,
when you are not having to put your home up,
yeah,
or things like that. And so now, once again, I mean, getting into there are you know things boxes you need to check, meaning no bankruptcies, payment history, and debt to income ratio needs to be in line, and all of these things, right? So
right.
happy to have that conversation, but it really can be a really good option.
And
Going back to some of the other options we talked about,
yeah,
your HELOCs, your family friend. I mean, those are all very um, not your traditional bank. Go to the bank. You may have a relationship with your banker, and
right.
that's fantastic. Go to the bank. But I would say that a lot of times, people come away not being able to get money. Most of
Uh,
the people that I mean, a lot of my clients,
yeah,
I don't
and
know about yours.
those more alternative sources can come in a lump sum loan or a line of credit often too, right? There's
Absolutely. Yeah. In lines of credit, and generally speaking, you would get that, kind of when open the business, and then use that for working capital. And so there's, even SBA Express, let's just say you didn't go the SBA route, or maybe you did, you actually can, get, working
yeah,
lines of credit through even SBA. So there's a lot of different ways to structure. And I would say this to people, when you're starting a business, and we had this conversation briefly, in the beginning, your funding partners sometimes will say, oh great, you got the money to start your business, like, congratulations. And then that's it. But we've both owned businesses, and I'm here to tell you guys that you very well may need money at some point during your time of owning this business. And sometimes those times are they're not planned. You did not expect it.
right.
Let's just say it, you're responsible for the heating and air, and it went out, and you're having to put in a new
Well,
unit at $10,000, and you're like, I'm not going to be able to make payroll if I do that. So I'm not, I don't say this as a fear. This isn't a
right.
fear catch, but it is you've got to think about these things, and having a business line of credit is very smart.
There's another thing that is well, another reason that comes up is a lot of times people want to, they've got bigger aspirations, but they start with a single location or a single territory, and they get 6, 12 months in and they realize, well, I want to lock up that territory next door before somebody else comes in and buys it.
Right.
Well, that's another, might be another 25, 35, $40,000
That's
franchise
right.
fee.
That's right.
And you're not going to be able to get that from the SBA when your business is only 6 or 12 months
That's
old.
right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And I've been there. Actually, that happened to me.
yeah,
Yeah. And so it is very important to, again, is to have a strategy, not in the beginning, but also a strategy throughout,
yeah,
how, and keep in mind when you have a line of credit, you don't have to pay, you're not paying payments or interest on something you haven't used yet, but it's there.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
These are all great things. Hopefully, people watching this are getting some sense for all of the different ways and the combinations of them to fund a business.
hmm
Excuse me. So with that, I will start leading us into kind of where do we go from here, right? If you're considering starting a business, certainly would encourage you to come down to the right hand corner on the bottom and click my calendar link or go to my LinkedIn and reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you about franchising and where we go, how it might work for you. Of course, my website has lots of information as well. But if you'd like to go straight to Maria and have a conversation around funding, if that's where you're at, here's her information. And Maria, I'll let you, sign off yourself. Talk a little bit too about some of the other funding things that you do
yeah.
if people are watching.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it's a great segue into, I mean, you still, when you're running your business or you want to scale your business, I actually do equipment leasing, equipment financing, accounts receivable financing, debt restructuring, revenue-based lending, security-based lending, and so that could be even credit lines up to 70 to 90% of your existing portfolio that is just lending based on your portfolio. So there's just a lot of creative ways out there, right? And also they're not telling you how to spend that money.
right.
As the SBA will, certainly regulate how you spend some of, your money, obviously. Even business acquisitions. If you're wanting to buy out a partner, or maybe you want to buy, a resale. Certainly, SBA is an option, but there's other options. And construction equipment financing I mentioned, and with that being said, I mean, equipment financing, a lot of cases you don't even need good credit. Um, in most cases, you do need about 2 years of business to be in business and your tax returns, but not always. So, and we're talking even your trucks,
Mhm.
to get your trucks or any kind of equipment, restaurants, pizza ovens, if a salon,
Yeah.
medical equipment, things like that. So, keep in mind, there's other different ways to fund. I also work with commercial lending, so your fix and flip financing, real estate transactions. I also own a construction company, as I've mentioned to you, and we build accessory dwelling units. Deal with a lot of people that.
Yeah.
Um, that do real estate, Airbnbs and rentals and things like that. So it's certainly it helps as far as offering that funding option to them as well.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I hopefully the takeaway here is, you know, just invest in a conversation,
right.
right? If you're looking at business or business real estate, franchising, any of this stuff, talk to one of us about, where you're at and where you want to be. And our role is to help you get there, you
Yeah,
know.
and I have a team too, John. Some
Yeah.
people might be thinking, "Oh my goodness, how does she do all this?" And I have a team of people on this business and my other, business,
Sure.
as well as my franchise consulting business. So yeah, we will definitely take care of you. Happy to have that conversation, and I really appreciate the time and you
No,
having
thank
me
you so
on.
much. This has been fantastic. And yeah, we all anybody who's successful in business doesn't get there by themselves. I
No,
certainly I have a fantastic team that leads our hair salons. I have another great manager that leads our children's entertainment center, and of course couldn't do it without my wife helping with all of it too.
That's
So
right. That's right.
yeah, but thank you very much for joining me, and anybody who's joined us and stayed with us here to the end. Thank you. We definitely appreciate that. And if you're watching this on the recording, it means a lot that you took the time to watch this. My resources are all here, as I mentioned. My website, my YouTube, LinkedIn. You're maybe watching this there, and of course my calendar link at the bottom. And if you're really just old fashioned and want to pick up the phone and call me, that's my phone number. So with that, I'm going to end this for today. Thanks again, Maria, for joining me, and thank you all for watching and paying attention. And I look forward to meeting you in the near future, hopefully. Have a great day,
Thank
everybody.
you.
You bet.